Does anybody else feel like now would be the perfect time to have a dance competition? Right? Like we should do that? No, we really shouldn't. I mean, it sounds like a good idea, but if we tried, it probably would go poorly. Well, hey, I want to welcome everyone to the second week of our 2023 Christmas series that we're calling Fandemonium. I mentioned last week, this comes from that word pandemonium, right? Which pandemonium means wild and noisy disorder or confusion. It means an uproar. So Fandemonium is when we get excited as fans, but don't follow through and live our lives as followers. That's really what this is all about. And as Christians, we fall into this trap quite often, don't we? We have maybe a celebrity pastor or author or artist that we follow, and when we are around them or read or experience something they offered to us, it's very easy sometimes for us to kind of go a little bit crazy. We get loud and passionate, and we even, become very demonstrative in our responses or in our worship. And while those things aren't bad things, those can be really good things. If that's all we ever do, and we never live any life coming out of that, it doesn't transfer to our lives. That's a problem. The Bible tells us this, right? In 1 Corinthians 13:1, that if we speak in the tongues of men and of angels, if we do all kinds of crazy things and are so passionate for Jesus, but we don't have love, we don't live our lives, we're really just like a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal, right? Lots of sound and fury, as Shakespeare said, but we signify absolutely nothing. Now, you guys might remember if you're here last week, I recommended a book. This book would be a great companion piece. If you are a reader, you like to read, you're reading all the time, I'm going to encourage you to get this book. This would be even a cool book. Maybe you're like, I am so busy this month, Rob, I don't have time to read a book. Get it and commit to reading it in January as a response to this year in this series. We actually ordered a bunch of them. They showed up Monday, so they are in the bookstore now. If you want to go and get one, you can do that. It's by Kyle Idleman. It's called Not a Fan, and it's all about being a completely committed follower of Jesus, and what does that look like? Now, for years, New Hopers, small groups here have read this and have suggested it, and again, it really asks this idea, am I a fan of Jesus? Or are we actually followers? And the goal is, because if you're being honest, you might actually conclude you're a little more of a fan than a follower. That's okay as a starting point. We just want to make sure we continue moving and growing in the direction of being completely committed followers of Jesus. That is the goal. Now, last week, amen, Lisa. Last week we started this conversation by saying everyone loves a baby, right? And the guys kind of murmured and mumbled a little bit, but whatever. And the idea was there's plenty of people who are happy after a little cute baby's been born to show up for 30 minutes, bring a gift, say some nice words, and then get the heck out of there and go, whoo, right? But not too many people want the responsibility of being a parent. A fan is easy, a follower is difficult. Right? It's tough to be a follower. But it's only as followers that we get God's peace, right? He is the Prince of Peace. We learned that last week. And purpose, right? When we actually follow Jesus, He has things for us to do. He sends us out to fish for people. And so when we live as true followers, we have peace and purpose. If you don't have peace and you don't have purpose, you got to check if you're actually following Jesus. And man, when we do this, we get to live completely different lives. And this is awesome. So, if I am only ever drawn to things that add excitement to our lives. Church, I remember, I grew up in a town of 600 in rural Canada, right? It makes Loudonville feel like New York City, right? So, like, at certain times of the year, literally the only thing that'd be open is a gas station until like 11 at the latest. So if you were like, at your house at 9 o'clock and you're like, it's been a long day, we haven't had food, we don't really have anything, I want to go grab a bite, you couldn't. That's where I grew up, right? So like I totally felt that. I'm like, I want I want to go do something. I want to go places. This isn't very exciting. If you and I are only ever drawn to excitement, we only do things that are the most exciting, it's going to actually at some point start working against our ability to follow Jesus. Right? Because sometimes following Jesus isn't exciting. Sometimes it's just like boring, right? Because we're just doing the same faithful thing over and over. Sometimes it requires struggle and sacrifice to follow Jesus. Do we keep going in those moments, or do we go, well, I got a way more enjoyable, exciting, fun offer? So that was last week. This week, I want to talk to us about this. Shiny things galore. Woo! Anyone else in here, don't raise your hand, just think about this. Anyone else in here embarrassed by how often and how much you are drawn to this thing in your life? How often it comes out of your pocket? You're like, I got to check something again. You just checked something 4 seconds ago. Yeah, but I got to see, right? Like, again, don't raise your hand. And here's what I would encourage. If you had a check in your spirit as I asked that question, yeah. And maybe you're like, no, I don't have a problem. But maybe you, like me, had a thing, like I just had a notification this morning that said this: your screen time was down 18% from last week. Yay! Except for the next sentence. And your average was 7 hours and 23 minutes a day. Right? So maybe you're like, no, I hardly ever look at that thing. Right? And if your like family member, friend, significant other says you have a problem and you don't think you have a problem, guess what? You definitely have a problem, right? That's the thing. So the average in our country, we look at screens 7 hours and 4 minutes a day. So maybe that's the shiny thing that distracts you, or maybe it's material possessions, or maybe it's all the things that are on our overwhelming to-do lists. Maybe it's even our goals and ambitions in life. Maybe it's our schedules. But isn't it true that life has this way of ping-ponging our attention from one thing to another thing to another thing to another thing? Come on, anybody? Right? Isn't this how it works? Another way we say this kind of shiny thing, right, in our culture is this: squirrel, right? If I would have thought about it sooner, I would have wanted a little taxidermed squirrel sitting up here with me. You know, one of the ways that this bugs me, and maybe it bugs you too, I hate when I'm having a conversation. Some of you are like, oh, you shouldn't say hate, that's a strong. No, I hate when I'm having a conversation with somebody and like our eyes never meet because they're always just, right? And you know what's even worse? You know what's even worse? Is when you're having a conversation with somebody who's actually there and they keep picking up their phone because it vibrated and it may be a message or a call. Oh, hang on. Oh. Like there's a real live person right here. Right? And I don't know about you, this is the sensation. This makes me feel like who I'm talking to is always looking for a better offer. Right? Like, I don't know who that is, and I might want to see. Right? Just, how about you just leave it alone? Right? Listen, again, if you're checked by this, let me just encourage you. You have to have times in your life, every day, every week, where you just put the thing down and leave it at home and go about your life to break that connection that it has on you. I also understand, I know what I just said, but that some environments are about 100 small interactions, and other environments are about a singular, deeper interaction. We oftentimes joke that, Sunday morning for people like me is not the best time if someone's like, I have an emergency, can we go talk for half an hour? Because Sunday morning is way more about 100 smaller interactions than it's about, one deeper interaction. The whole rest of the week is an opportunity for multiple deeper singular interactions. And it's not to say that in a true emergency Sunday can't be at times, but you understand what I'm saying? right? So it makes sense. But when we're with people, we want to give them our focus. So I think all this is true in general, right? That our focus is everywhere, and shiny things distract us, and squirrels distract us, and whatever distracts us. But Christmas is this on steroids, right? Like, think about it. I mean, just think. Now, guys, you might go, I don't know what you're talking about, but you know what? If you have a lady in your life, look to her. I saw a thing this week that said, you know what the most useless decoration for Christmas is? The mom stocking, right? Because, like, mom basically becomes Santa and does all the work, right? And actually, I think my wife responded to that and said, I don't know. I kind of like that Santa knows exactly what I want in my stocking, right? But just think of all the prep work that goes into Christmas, right? Like, think about all your schedule, the food, the presents, just buying presents. Even if you have plenty of money to buy everybody exactly what they want, and you're happy to do that, still figuring that out and making it happen is a lot of work, even in the best case scenario. Other people's expectations of us, traditions that maybe aren't completely our traditions, but family members want to superimpose what has always been their tradition on everybody else, right? And so we walk around. So again, don't raise your hand, especially if you're by family, but think about this. Is anyone else in here stressed by all the places you need to be and all the things you need to do these next number of weeks? So you're just like, I am. I'm just admitting it and living with it, and that's just how it's going to be, right? Anybody else stressed by all the gifts and expense of this time of year? I want you guys to know something, and this might be the most controversial thing I've said all year. And some of you will be like, that wasn't controversial at all, but others of you will be like, Rob, you shut your mouth right now. Listen, if you are stressed because of what the next number of weeks right now look like they're going to look like, you can just say no. Did you know this? Yeah, right? Like, no one ever told me. If you're a guy, no one probably ever told you were allowed to say no, but you can just say no. So let me tell you about, for Bethany and I, our Christmas epiphany. Now, for me, Christmas has always been, it's not been like for many of us, right, at some point, maybe we have a few days off work, so when that happens, we can go wherever and do whatever, right? Well, for me, that's not usually like that. Usually up through Christmas Eve, I am extremely busy. That's just part of the deal. I totally get that. That doesn't bother me at all. And so what happened for the first number of years of our marriage is we would be doing church stuff up through whatever time, some 8, 9, 10, midnight on Christmas Eve, and then we would get in our car and we would drive either to Canada and back or Michigan and back. And we kind of flip-flopped every year. And so when we would leave at midnight and arrive somewhere at 7 or 8 in the morning after working a full day, doing all this stuff at night, and then driving all through the night, I just remember thinking to myself, every year we experience a Christmas miracle that we still are alive, right? Because driving in that weather to those places at that time, it's just not a safe thing to do. And so one year we were driving home. This year was our year to go to Bethany's family. So the next year we were going to be going to my parents. And I said, babe, a couple things. Thing number one is, it's we have these number of days, and at the end of them we are just so exhausted and really didn't get to think about, focus on, or celebrate Jesus really at all, which is terrible. Number two is every part of our Christmas holiday is about family tradition and not about our own traditions, where we at some point will help our kids to see Jesus at this time of year as well. And so what's going to happen is at some point those family members whose traditions we kind of get pulled into, they're going to go see Jesus, and Christmas is going to be a terrible time for us because we never did anything to establish any traditions ourselves. So I said to Bethany, what do you think about next year us saying we're going to do Christmas at home and invite my parents to come? If they want to come, great. If they don't, great. And then the year after, we invite your parents to come. If they want to come, great. If they don't, great. And then the next couple years, as long as we don't have kids yet, we'll do the back and forth thing, and then we'll do 2 years at our place, and we'll just sort of do it like that. and we actually did it. Like, we literally did it. And it's been a very good thing. So some of you were like, Others of you were like, no, my whole family always has to do my tradition until I die. And you want to say amen, but don't. All right, so here's the main question today. And the next thing I think that works against you and I following Jesus. And here's the question. Are you easily distracted? Again, yeah. Some of you, these are all just for all of us, right? And again, you don't need to raise your hand, but I'm just going to speak for me. Does it ever feel like it's getting worse and worse as time goes on and as you're getting a little older? For me, I thought that this would get easier or better, and it seems to be getting worse. Why is it that more than 9.4% of our children have ADHD, and there's been a 42% increase of that diagnosis over the last 8 years? Why is that the case? For so many, all this stuff makes us long for a few of those silent nights that we sing about at this time of year, right? But I want you to hear this. Christmas is best experienced in this slow and intentional manner. If you really want to get the most out of Christmas, you got to engage with it in a slow and intentional way. And so just think about this for me. As you look at these coming weeks, for many of us, things look like anything but this, don't they? It's not slow, it's not intentional, it's some of the most chaotic time of our year. Too much excitement and too much distraction, even really good things that we would say these are good and we should embrace them, can cause us to yet again miss entirely what Christmas is all about. So what do we do? I want us to look at a few places in the scriptures because I can sort of continue to give you some of my own thoughts, but I think we should hear from God. Amen? Amen. All right, so first one, Colossians 3:2 says this, very simple. Set your minds on things above, not on earthly things. Paul here is talking about those who are spiritually free thanks to their faith in Jesus, and he's telling them that they should not live in the sins that used to be their habits, right? So stop doing this. Like, you don't want to keep falling into this sin over and over and over again. You don't want to always have that issue, that struggle, that thing that seems to sort of not be able to let go of you. So the response might be, well, that sounds really great, right? Paul, it's easier to say that with your words than it is for me to do it. So how do I do this? Because I've tried and I've failed over and over again for a very long time. And there's this one thing or these few things that just have a hold of me, and I can't seem to get free. And while it is easier to say something than it is for us to do something, Paul here reveals the power of putting our mind to something. You ever have a teacher or a parent say that? Just put your mind to it, right? And so we can gain access to this by asking and answering this really simple question. Where do you and where do I set your mind? Where do you set your mind? Where you set your mind determines what you will see and what you will think about. Let me give you an example of this. Anybody, and you can use whatever it is in your life. I'm sure for many of us we have those things, especially maybe as we get closer to Christmas and maybe there's that thing that Santa is going to bring you that you're going to go pick up here, or maybe you've already gotten it. All right? So let me ask you this. Like, maybe, again, you think of your thing, but maybe in your life you're like, man, my car's 12 years old and I'm fixing it 3 or 4 times a year. This isn't working. So you start thinking about a new car. And maybe even you start Googling it. Hey, what's the best new car? And hey, gas mileage. And you start reading consumer reports and seeing things, right? And then maybe you even stop at a few car lots to check some things out. And you call your bank to see what the best interest rate you could get is. And you call your insurance company to see how, if you were to buy maybe this car or that car, what it would do to your insurance. Let me ask you, when you find yourself in a season like that, it could be a car, it could be literally anything. What do you always think about? Always. That thing, right? Like, I'm always thinking about the car. I'm always thinking about the bass boat, right? Or Taylor's like, no, I already got one of those, right? Whatever. Whatever that is, we always think about that thing. When we set our mind to something, it's always there, and it's there a lot. And so we have a couple choices that Paul gives to us. He says we can set our minds on earthly things, and all of us at some time do, right? We do this. These are the schedules, the stuff, the good, the bad. But what does Paul say? Do not set your mind on earthly things. If you want to overcome the sins of your past, you can't think about and focus on things of the earth. You can't focus on and think about those sins. If you look at them, that's all you'll think about. It's all you'll see. You'll be overcome and overwhelmed by that. Don't do this. Or we can set our minds, Paul says, on things above. We can set our minds on God. We can set our minds on Jesus. We can set our minds on the Holy Spirit. We can set our minds on eternal things and on heavenly things, right? Set your mind here and see if it doesn't change your life. So look at all the earthly stuff and see if you don't get overwhelmed and get stuck and never make any more progress. And set your mind on things above, on Jesus, and see if your life isn't transformed. I think that this is worth trying out. I think he's in here. Is Gary, are you in here? Is he serving with kids and he'll be in here second gathering? He's upstairs? All right, he'll be in here the next gathering. Gary Black, my friend, he shared something on Facebook this week, and I thought it fit perfectly here. Look at this. 2 things to remember in life. Take care of your thoughts when you are alone, and take care of your words when you are with people. Isn't that good? And so I think the idea here, which it just reinforces what we saw in the scriptures, if we manage our thoughts well, what we set our minds on when we're alone, it will make all the difference in every other aspect of our lives. But, and we do this, don't we? Anyone else ever do this? Don't raise your hand for this one. You guys aren't listening to me today. I tell you this, and people are still doing that. But listen, how many times do you do this? Something happens. It might not even be a big deal, but it just kind of irritates you. Come on, anybody? No, don't raise your hand. Don't raise your hand, right? And so you go home, and you start complaining about that, and you set your mind on the offense, the issue, the whatever, and then all of a sudden you just feel more out of sorts, more, offended, more whatever, right? Don't set your mind on that stuff. That's what we're hearing here. So manage your thoughts well when you are by yourself, when you're at home, and it's going to make the difference. All right, let's take another step. I love this. Hebrews 12:2 tells us this. Let us fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith. The context here is about how we can all consistently run this race of life and have faith successfully throughout our lives, like to continue to run this race of faith. And so how do you do that, right? Like, I can have faith in a moment. I can have faith when things are good. I can maybe sometimes have faith when things are really, really bad because there's nothing else that's even going to possibly work. But just like for the regular part of life, how do we continue to choose and have faith? Well, the answer seems to have something to do with where we are looking. One of the things that I read in a book decades ago now, when I started getting serious about mountain biking, was when you're mountain biking, you always want to be looking down the trail. And as long as you're looking at the trail, your bike will stay on the trail. But if there's like a deer or a bird, and you start looking other places, your bike will, even if you're like, I got to stay on the trail, your bike will follow where your eyes go. This is why, and this, some of you might want to come to me afterwards and say, thank you so much, Rob, for saying this. This is why, if you are in your family, you're going somewhere and you are the driver, and something happens, there's an animal in the field, there's an accident, there's a whatever. If you are the driver, you cannot look at that. okay? You keep your eyes on the road. If you're the driver, that's your only job, is to keep your eyes on the road. Why is that? Because if you look at the thing, you know what will happen. You will put your destination, your mission, and your cargo in grave danger, right? Because you will likely veer off the road and people will be looking at you and probably joining what happened there as well. So here's the question here. Where do you fix your eyes? Where in life? Do you fix your eyes on your busyness? Do you fix your eyes on your needs? Do you fix your eyes on your troubles? Because that's a choice many people make all the time, every day, but then that becomes all they see, and that's where they head, just deeper into their issues, their busyness, their troubles, their schedule. What about all the good things about being here? Do you focus your attention there? That's better, but do you know even the good things are temporary? Relationships here on this earth are temporary in terms of an earthly context, right? So we still, even though we focus sometimes on better things, on good things, they're not the best things, and they're still temporary. But what does the text tell us? It encourages us to focus our eyes, our sight on Jesus, who is two things, right? He is the author or the initiator, that term can also be translated, of our faith, right? So if we want to have faith, if we want faith to start, if we want it to be born, to be initiated, how does that happen? Is it everything we can do? No, it's by fixing our eyes on Jesus, because he's the one that begins faith. But if we don't just want to have like kind of this fanny start to faith, but we want to progress and grow in our faith and actually more and more become actual followers of Jesus, this is good news. We have to keep our eyes, our sight fixed on him, because he's also the finisher or the perfecter of our faith. You are not the author or the finisher of your faith. Did you know that? It's not your hard work that results in the most faith and the most impact of your life. It's your ability to fix your eyes on Jesus. So if you want your faith to start and to grow, this is your only option in terms of where your eyes are fixed. So let me just ask you, and again, don't raise your hand, but think about this. As you evaluate the coming weeks, where are your eyes this Christmas? All right, Rob, set my mind, fix my eyes. You know what? If there was just one passage that could kind of give me more of like a practical example, put a little color on this to what it is, well, I'm glad you said that, because there is. So let's just look here for a minute at Luke chapter 14, a very familiar passage. I just want to read it over you and just make a couple draw a couple of insights. So this text says this: large crowds were traveling with Jesus, and turning to them, he said, "If anyone comes to me and does not hate father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, even their own life, such a person cannot be my disciple." What? "And whoever does not carry their cross and follow me cannot be my disciple. Suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Won't you first sit down and estimate the cost to see if you have enough money to complete it? For if you lay the foundation and are not able to finish it, everyone who sees it will ridicule you, saying, 'This person began to build and wasn't able to finish.' Or suppose a king is about to go to war against another king. Won't he first sit down and consider whether he is able with 10,000 men to oppose the one coming against him with 20,000? If he is not able, he will send a delegation while the other is still a long way off and ask for terms of peace. In the same way, if those of you who do not give up everything, you cannot be my disciples. Salt is good, but if it loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is neither fit for the soil nor for the manure pile. It is thrown out. Whoever has ears to hear, let them hear." So a couple things, and then I want to kind of just make 2 points. So the first is this idea biblically of carrying our cross is something in multiple places throughout the New Testament, throughout the Gospels, where we're given this command to do this daily, right? So we're to carry our cross daily. This isn't like we do it one time and it was really hard, but we got through and now we're good. Or at special times of year like Christmas and Easter, we'll honor Jesus by carrying our cross. No, this is something we're invited to do daily. Now, I've always wondered at the end there, I've kind of thought it was like making a point, maybe that it wasn't. You know, if salt loses its saltiness, right? Speaking of us, Jesus said we as his people are salt and light. We flavor, we make a difference, we impact things and places and people that we are around and by. But if it loses its saltiness, it's not fit for soil or for the manure pile. It has to be thrown out. And I'm like, well, isn't if you just pitched it on the manure pile, isn't that sort of like the worst way to be thrown out? Well, actually, at this time, they would add salt to manure, and it would actually enhance and activate it so it could be used as fertilizer, and it was way more effective. So in all these things, salt was used to enhance and make a difference. And the idea here is if we don't hear this truth, we miss out and things aren't important. So how Paul ends this is whoever has ears to hear, let them hear. He's saying, listen up. This is important. And some of you may totally miss this because this isn't just a ability to like hear noises thing. It's not a physical ears. It's a spiritual hearing that he's talking about. So we have two broad thoughts. Here's the first one. If you have heard, you better act. This is what Jesus is saying here. Like, I'm telling you this truth, and if you actually have heard it and you have spiritual insight, you understand it, you better do it. Because you don't want to know this and do nothing with it because it's that important. Now, we start this text with this really difficult thing, and I alluded to that. And so some of you might wonder, what in the world is going on? Because Jesus seems to pretty consistently advocate for loving people. You know, certainly in the New Testament there was, and really the whole Bible, there was the people of God, and they were encouraged to love each other. In many respects, they lived communally. We have an individualistic culture and society. They had a very communal and sort of family-based society. They would have lived drastically different than we would. So there's all this stuff about loving people and kindness all throughout the Bible, but all of a sudden, like there's this command or encouragement to take people like our brothers and sisters and mothers and fathers and hate them and even hate our own lives. Now, if the Bible seems to say two different things, especially within the same book, especially being written by the same person, you have to ask why, right? Because the Bible's not like confused. The writers weren't schizophrenic. It wasn't like, well, it's this way now and I changed my mind. I won't edit or let anyone know. So when the Bible says one thing and then seems to say something different, we have to ask why. Because in the culture, in the context, everybody hearing this would have understood why. The problem is now, thousands of years later, when we come to these same texts, I heard a scholar say it this way, especially when we read in like New Testament letters, it's like reading someone else's mail. So if someone writes someone a letter and it comes to your mailbox by accident and you don't realize and you open it and you read it, there's going to be things that you don't understand, right? Because there's like a situation going on and you may not know all of those details or what this is about. It's like reading someone else's mail. So why does Jesus say this? Well, what he's really saying is make your allegiance to Jesus so strong that those you love the most on this planet seem like hate in comparison. Ouch. It's hard, isn't it? Why? Why would we ever do this? Because if those things that are absolutely important are even close to Jesus for you, you're going to always be distracted. Right? Does anyone else feel like that, like in life? Yeah. Jesus, I really want to, but, right? Jesus, I would, but my mom will be mad. Or right? Grandma will never forgive me. Whatever that is for you. I don't know who that is for you. We got to be thinking about this stuff. And some of you are like, I get it, Rob, but that's really more for like the life of a pastor or a missionary. And yes, that's true for people like me, but don't miss that Jesus calls all of us as his disciples to this. He's not talking about people who are just some of us or who have a special calling. This is his invitation for every one of us. If you know this and you do not have the spiritual ears to hear it or to receive it, this isn't good for you. It's certainly not good for God, and it's not good news for the world that we live in. All right, here's the last thought. Being a follower requires an act of will. So in this text, we have two examples, right, after this setup. If someone's going to build a tower, don't they first sit down and say, do I have enough money to complete this? Because if I don't complete it, at some point people are going to ridicule me saying, that idiot thought he was going to build a tower and he just ran out of money and now there's this half-built tower sitting there, right? Don't do that. I wonder, because of the analogy he's making, even though many place their expectations on us, hey, come here, do this with me, skip that, this is going to be way more exciting or whatever, and so we get distracted and we do those things. So people put their expectations on us, but I wonder in general, and especially at this time of year, if they're not comforted when they try to do that, and we're like, I really wanted to do this, I really felt God gave me this opportunity, I really felt like God called me to do this, I felt like maybe God gave me an opportunity to impact or influence some other people, some other families, some other lives. But yeah, I know, and this is important, and family first, and we say all those things, right? And I wonder when we allow people to bend us to their will instead of us allowing God's Spirit to bend us to his will, if their knowing that doesn't actually give them a little comfort, because they know that when we are challenged, we're kind of like them, because they don't put God first, and they see in these kind of key moments, we don't really do that either. We might say the right things, but when it all comes down to it, other things matter more. I think about this tower idea with my house. When we first moved into our house, like just a little more than 4 years ago, we sold a car, so we have one car payment. We like begged, borrowed, and stole. We didn't really steal. But like literally every extra penny, and then in the preceding years, every extra penny has been going toward paying off all the debt we incurred to do that so that we could do it again. And I look at my house all the time and I'm like, but now we have a kid in college, and now we have this, and now we have that, and now we have this. And it's like, when is this ever going to get done? Never's the answer. You're right. That is the right answer. But you can't look at that because it's not good. The other example is if you're a king and you have someone coming to fight you, you really wrestle with, can I, with my 10,000 troops, defeat the one coming with 20,000 troops? And then you decide, right? I either need to go all in, being willing to risk everything, or I need to send a delegation of peace to say, hey, what are the terms? Let's have peace. I need to go all in or ask for terms of peace. But listen, the idea here really is this. For all of us, we need to go all in for Jesus and ask for terms of peace. Amen. If we go all in for Jesus, like we talked last week, we will all have way more peace in our lives. The thing that keeps us from having that peace isn't like God holding anything back. It's because we choose not to live at the level that this is part of that. So the text here talks about picking up your cross, which requires work and sacrifice in order to follow Jesus daily. Work and sacrifice. Anybody getting really inspired right now? Hey, today, tomorrow, the next day, are you willing to work and sacrifice for Jesus? Rob, come on, it's Christmas and things are pretty and I'm getting excited like you talked about last week. I know that's not like the ideal, but I'm feeling excited. And, oh man, you are right. So much is happening. Shiny things galore. I'm distracted by what's coming up. Can I just wait till January to work and sacrifice? And Jesus is like, really? So this is how we follow Jesus. And it takes will. It takes will to say no to all that contributes to distraction, including other good things, in order to focus more on Jesus. It takes a tremendous act of will. It took that for young Rob and young Bethany to tell their families they wanted to establish some of their own traditions and risk their lives a little bit less by not driving through the darkness of night for Christmas holidays for a couple years. But really, this is what Fandemonium is all about. Right? There's plenty of people out there who are willing to pitch in some wild and noisy disorder or confusion, some uproar, but that all by itself is the stuff of fans, right? That doesn't amount to anything more than short-lived excitement and distraction for all of us. Jesus is looking for people who will choose less distraction and who will count the cost and who will carry the cross and who will follow him. This is what Jesus wants from us, very clearly. Now, here's where we're going to end and land today. The Old Testament, if you read through it, and you might sort of pick this up if you kind of read it seriously, the Old Testament doesn't really talk about or have monotheism in the way that we typically think about monotheism, that one theism, God, one God, right? Like, so here's Yahweh, who is God, and he's always sort of fighting his people to focus on him and not everything and all the other gods and everyone else. And so what would happen in the Old Testament is people, they're like, okay, here's my one true God, but man, I had a really rough year last year and I didn't get much rain for my crops and we didn't have enough food to eat and it was really difficult. And so the guy down the road, though, he prayed to this little idol or this other god, this lesser god, and he got plenty of rain and have really good crops. So while this is my one true God, I'm happy to sort of pray a little prayer to or pay some homage to this other God because maybe that God will help with my crops, even though this is still my one true God, right? So this is something that was very, very, very common, almost like it is for us. Oh, no, God, you are my God. But money is kind of a god, and my work is kind of a god, and this sports team is kind of a god in my life. Right? Come on, right? Like very similar to that, where we say, no, we don't do that, but we kind of do that. Now, Joshua, who is Moses' successor and the one that God used as the warrior to finally lead God's people into the promised land, what he was saying in this one text, he's saying, put all that stuff from your ancestors down and serve God. And kind of at this key moment as they're sort of recommitting their covenant with God at Shechem, he says, choose this day whom you will serve, but as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. Church, if you want to be a follower of Jesus, followers choose this day, each and every day, who they will serve. And then with an act of their will, they follow through on that. So listen, don't let your life consistently distract you. We're all distracted at some time. That's normal. But if you're consistently distracted, do not allow for that. Don't become overly distracted at Christmas, a time of the year when we should be the most focused, and yet for virtually all of us, we are typically even more distracted than usual. Now listen, this is not a bail on your family and come binge every single New Hope Christmas opportunity. That's not what this is. But it is an invitation to look at these coming weeks, to evaluate your plans, and to shift Jesus to the center of them, to make him the focus. And that might mean coming here. Or it might mean other things. I'm not going to be prescriptive on that, but think about how you can most effectively make Jesus the center of these coming weeks. To hear about and experience what happened on that silent night 2,000 years ago. To consider the light of the world. It might just be Liam, since he was 2, loved holding up that little lit candle at just before midnight on Christmas Eve. That could just make all the difference for someone. And really to think about how he matters so much to us.
Hi, my name's Tommy.
And I'm Eddie.
We're the Skit Guys with a very special Christmas message for you.
For centuries, Christmas was celebrated not as a single day, but as a whole season beginning on December 24th, Christmas Eve. I mean, it was a day celebrated with feasting and dancing and storytelling, and of course, candles lit to reflect the coming of the birth of Christ.
However, lighting that Christmas Eve candle can be a real booger.
No, we don't say boogers in church.
I mean, you just did.
I know I repeated you. I was just saying everybody knows how to light a Christmas Eve candle.
Well, not if they're like me. But that's not a problem anymore, because with another candle and Santa's little helper, it's no problem. Therefore, because of science, the candle will light.
No.
Okay, this one's ground. No, this one's ground. No, it doesn't matter. Let's do it. Look, we need a flame, and it's called a flame thrower.
No. Have you ever lit a match before?
No, I'm sorry. I live in a house. We have this thing called electricity. We no longer chase ogres with torches. Be still. Be still. I feel really bad. I'm sorry.
It's okay. I mean, it is the season of forgiveness. I mean, it is Christmas!
Using the lit candle, slowly unite the wicks until the flame transfers. Thank you, Jacob Marley. And that is how you light a Christmas candle. Merry Christmas from our house to yours.
You need to stop, drop, and roll.
You need to quit telling me what to do.
You need to stop, drop, and roll.
You need to quit being a Christmas killjoy is what you need. What? No! No!
Isn't it true? It's not just out there in the world where people get distracted, right? Sometimes it's even here in the church. And even at Christmas time where we can get distracted and miss everything as well. Oh, it's about my tradition or how we light the candle, or it's about the light of the world. So let's employ, church, our minds, let's employ our sight, and let's employ our will each and every day to personally behold Jesus the Christ and to help others do the very same thing.